Committee meeting to order. The day is April 9th. Time is 2 p.m. And a quorum is present. I see John Corlett is here. Adam is not here.
Artis and Adam are not here, but Dr. Walker and John are here, so you're, oh, here's Artis. Sorry, Artis.
Okay, but I thought that Adam Arnold and Lulu Gonzalez are new members.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lola. So Lola?
Lola.
Okay. Lola. Okay, so neither one of them are here. All right. But we do have members that provide a quorum. The first item on our agenda is a review and approval of the January 15th minutes. Artis, you weren't there, so you may want to abstain. John, you were around for most of the discussion, perhaps then or otherwise, so I'll leave it to you. But do I hear a motion to approve the minutes as written from the January 15th?
So moved.
John Moss moves.
Second.
All right, seconds. All those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any abstain? Artis. Alrighty. The ayes have it, and the motion, the minutes stand approved. We will actually, as part of our review of our board policy 07, the delegation of authority, there are two dimensions to that conversation. One's a little more common sense, but one's complicated that Sarah Partington is going to share with us, and that's the delegation of authority that we give to certain appointees who represent Metro Health on various boards and commissions and committees throughout the community. So Sarah, why don't you get us up to date on this? And we're going to be asking for changes to the delegation of authority in the draft that's before us, which encompasses the need for more flexibility, which Sarah's about to give.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So I'm here today to discuss the official capacity appointment process. This process allows Metro Health to appoint employees or trustees to represent Metro Health on local, state, or national boards. As public employees and officials, the Ohio Ethics Commission has issued guidance for when and how Metro Health can appoint an official representative. And as Mr. Summers alluded to, they have recently made a few changes to these rules. So we're going to touch on that a little bit. Before I dive into the nuances of the Ohio Ethics Commission's guidance, I just wanted to share the most recent list of the official capacity positions. So what you see right here on this slide, these are a list of organizations that the board previously approved for Metro Health to have official representatives on these boards. There are two that were not included in that list: Essential Hospitals Institute and Health Action Council, and leadership is currently reviewing those two appointments. The remaining organizations were previously approved last year, and leadership is taking a look at some of the vacancies. In some instances, we may no longer have a seat, but this is the full picture that you last saw. Now, if you go to slide 3, this is a list of organizations that are affiliated with Metro Health through a joint venture or an affiliation. For instance, our foundation, Recovery Resources, Ovation, where we have employees representing Metro Health and their official capacity on those boards as well. Now, if you go to the next slide. So I want to take a moment and highlight the difference between official capacity, so serving on behalf of Metro Health, and our personal capacity, so when we serve for ourselves. Many Metro Health employees and trustees actively participate on external boards, reflecting our commitment to our community, engagement, relationship building, and we want to encourage this involvement. But it's also crucial to remain vigilant about potential conflicts, whether they're related to the Ohio ethics law or potential business conflicts with Metro Health. We also want to just take a moment to step back and talk about the different roles and responsibility one has when they're serving in their official versus personal capacity. So for instance, when we appoint someone to serve on behalf of Metro Health in their official capacity, that person does not have an interest in that organization. Metro Health does, but not that person. The employee does speak for Metro Health. Metro Health can publicly contract with that organization. Generally, we would probably recommend the employee recuse themselves from any Metro Health negotiations. However, as you can see on the slide, there is a limited exception, and usually that involves a conversation with leadership. Now, in contrast, for employees or trustees that serve in their personal capacity, they have a personal interest in the organization as theirs. They do not speak for Metro Health. There are very few, Metro Health generally cannot have a public contract with that organization, and there are some exceptions, but that would be applied only after compliance and general counsel review the situation and do a legal analysis. And we would require that the employee recuse themselves from any business involved in the organization. And so this is why we just want to take a moment, why the official capacity appointment process is so important, is that we just want to make sure everyone who's out there serving their personal or official capacity, they understand how and when they represent Metro Health.
Just to prepare our thinking, as board will vote on a change, there's the consideration of not only the duties, but how these people are appointed, which is really what I think we're going to be driving towards. Is that correct?
Correct.
So bear in mind that this is a conceptual prelude to our action, which is who are these people and how do they get in these seats?
Absolutely. So the next slide, going back to our Ohio ethics law. So certain board positions that have a fiduciary responsibility, they may pose a potential conflict of interest. And the Ohio ethics law states that public employees and officials cannot have a private interest in a public contract. And you have to have both components. So private interest has to be direct, definitive. Now, it can be pecuniary or fiduciary. And generally, when you are serving on a board, you have a fiduciary responsibility. Under Ohio law, recusal does not correct that or rectify that potential conflict. So that's not enough. There's more steps. So once we identify whether someone has a private interest, then we look at, well, does Metro Health have a public contract with that organization? And that's any transaction where Metro Health is acquiring goods and services from an organization, whether it's buying a pen, buying land for a new building, there's no minimum threshold, and it does not require a written contract. Again, that's where Metro Health is buying. If an organization came to us and said, we want to buy water from Metro Health, that would not be a public contract. So there is some analysis we do to make sure that we have the right scope. So next slide. Now, the Ohio Ethics Commission has recognized there are instances where organizations are going to want to have someone serving that organization in an official capacity, and they've carved out an exception to that prohibition. So just generally, when we appoint someone to serve on behalf of Metro Health, they are serving on behalf of Metro Health. The seat remains with Metro Health. So if I were to be appointed to serve ABC board on behalf of Metro Health, and I win the lottery this weekend and decided to retire early, that seat remains with Metro Health. I would have to get that. It is not mine to take with me. There are still fiduciary responsibilities that Metro Health serves in the best interest of that organization. Now, what the Ohio Ethics Commission has said over the years is there's a 4-part test to ensure that these representatives are actually truly serving in an official capacity. And this is where the Ohio Ethics Commission recently loosened some of the restrictions. So previously, the commission required that the governing body, the board in our instance, formally appoint employees or officials to represent Metro Health, and also formally instruct employees or officials to act on behalf of Metro Health. The commission received a lot of feedback and acknowledged that that was overly burdensome to have to wait for these many times public meetings, or certain times public meetings that really didn't occur regularly and routinely, and there were missed opportunities to engage in some of these boards. So what they said was, they're going to defer to the public agency. The public agency can determine their process for appointing and instructing officials to serve on their behalf. The 2 other requirements remain, and one is that Metro Health has to create or participate on that board, and then whoever we decide to appoint cannot have any other conflicts with that appointment. Next slide. So we're going to look at our current process. So what we have been doing is that Metro Health leadership would evaluate the potential opportunities. So we have always checked to make sure that Metro Health meets that level of involvement, participation with the organization. We've always made sure there was the official that we proposed for the appointment did not have any other conflicts of interest. We've also made sure that the organization fits our mission, vision, values. We also take a look at who else is on the board, what other organizations are on the board to make sure it is an appropriate fit. After leadership did that evaluation, they would then submit it to the board for approval. And annually, we would come back and do a review of all the appointments. In the proposed state, we recommend that we continue with that leadership evaluation that I just mentioned, and that the CEO then approve any appointment in the official capacity, with the exception that if it involves a trustee or the CEO herself, she would then consult with the Board of Trustees before making that appointment. And then any updates, any changes to official appointments, the CEO would make by some public record, so be it the president's report or some other reflection, because that's the other component the Ohio Ethics Commission stresses, that after you determine how you're going to amend your process, they recommend you share the appointments in a public manner. I'll pause there for some questions.
How many appointments do, I saw the organizations, but some total, how many employees are we talking about?
In the official capacity, about 10 or 12, 10, 12 appointments, probably 8 employees. There's a list right here.
And has it ever been a burden for the CEO, to the CEO getting a board approval?
I wouldn't want to speak to that. I would,
You don't
that'd
want
be part of
to,
the
or you?
conversation. That would, I mean, that's one of the things that I would advise taking into consideration, look at your entire portfolio,
Yeah.
conflicts.
I don't think it's so much the burden of getting the approval, it's the time in between meetings and then having to wait to get that approval.
And that's a good question. You know, the reciprocal question, has the board ever not approved a CEO appointment? And if the answer is we're really working through a fairly routine process, let's delegate it and if there's issues, we'll deal with it when the time comes. That would be the other question. So to Dr. Walker and to Member Moss, have there ever been times where we objected to an appointment? Do you remember any of that?
No, and it could, and we doesn't have to be quarterly, it'd be monthly, right? I mean, executive committee, or it doesn't have to be board, we don't have for an appointment.
And one of the recommendations is that as far as, so if we get into a situation where, so ideally, if something came up and Dr. Alexander wanted to appoint Tamika to a board, she could do that. And then at the next board meeting, her presence report, we would, similar to how we publish the faculty appointments, something like that. If it involved, again, an appointment of Dr. Alexander, or if Mr. Moss, you wanted to join a board, then we would have a conversation.
We're going to board through Metro and representing Metro.
Correct. In your official capacity, we would have a conversation with the board, and that could be memorialized in writing. It wouldn't have to wait for a committee meeting or a resolution. And that's really what the intent of the commission was.
So it streamlines the process, allows the CEO to be a little more thoughtful about the match between the organization and the leadership required in our person, and reports back to us, here's what we're doing. And I suppose if we had concerns, we would deal with the CEO at that point. Is that correct?
Correct.
And for reference of the CEO, this has always been doing this. Board we've never said, hey, let's put someone
Right,
on,
that-
I can't recall. It's always
Just
been that way.
leadership has always made the
Yeah, right.
recommendation,
We've
and I will say the current
I can recall.
resolution has always given the CEO the power to appoint a representative. If a vacancy occurs, they could delegate the new representative in the interim.
They've always had that, you're saying?
That came up in the last 2 years, yes. And typically we'd give titles in the board resolution, names. As people moved around, it was just easier just to leave it as titles.
And I wonder if some of these organizations allow for alternative board members to such at, you know, I'm the appointee, I'm person A. I can only make 2/3 of the meeting, but the culture of the organization allows for an alternative to serve in my stead if I can't make it. We would want the CEO to appoint that alternative as well. As a practical matter. NOACA, for example, does that, which allocates, as an organization, allocates about 50 million of federal transportation money annually. And so there are standing seats and then there are alternative to the seats. So the organizations are there. You probably have experience with that, Tamika. You were probably an alternative or an appointee.
I got out of that.
Yeah,
Well, I imagine that would be up to the organization, would probably decide whether they accept it.
that's right, yeah. Okay, are we clear? All right,
And the next slide, we do have some organizations where we serve as an advisory capacity, so it's non-fiduciary, simply just consulting, there's no voting, and we just provide that list for transparency.
so Brendan Sorg, an attorney here on the Metro Health staff, is going to walk us through the proposed changes to Board of Trustees Policy 07, which is in our board books on the next pages. First, there's a resolution that will give us the need to take action, and then is Board 07 draft changes in red. So Brendan, you want to walk us through that?
Sure. So right at the outset, we wanted to just make clear that these delegations come from the board and can be modified by the board at any time. So in addition to addressing the presentation that Sarah just gave, we have a clarifying line that says the board may modify such delegated authorities anytime. Mr. Summers, do you want to expand on that at all?
Yeah,
On the
well,
reason?
you know, I've been very interested in this notion of how the CEO of this organization reflects upon the board delegation of authority, and whether or not that's a one-way street, and that any change in that delegation reflects a change of the duties of the CEO. I don't believe we mean it to be that way. I think we believe it's a live document, but the document doesn't make that as clear as I think were proposed changes. That as circumstances become before us, both as the CEO and the board, we may choose to give more delegated authority, or we may choose to modify some that's already been delegated to get greater clarity of whose responsibility we share. And that's the purpose of those words. Do you have any thoughts you want to share? Any concerns about that?
No, I really don't. I feel like, we need to be really thoughtful, because this isn't just something that applies to me sitting in this seat now. This applies to every person who comes after me. And so I think if we're making the change, it should be reflective of the true nature of the relationship we seek to have. So I'm very comfortable.
I appreciate that. Any questions on board members on this element? Seeing none?
I have a question, but it doesn't relate to this part of, it's part of the policy that is not being amended, but I just had a question about it as I looked at it. So I don't know if this is the time to ask that.
Do you want to, Mr. Chairman, do you want to get to the other proposed change?
Yeah, let's do this, John. I know we've got your question.
Okay.
James Wall's prepared to answer it. Let's go through the draft as written. And,
Okay.
And then we'll entertain your question.
Yeah, so if we scroll down to section 8, then we felt that within the existing language around memberships, it made sense to add this official capacity appointment language that captures the presentation that Sarah gave. And so in a new language would be an additional section 8.2 that makes clear that the CEO has the authority to authorize Metro Health employees to participate in any local, state, or national organizations, board of directors, or equivalent body in their official capacity as a Metro Health employee. And those appointments will be regularly reported to the board as they occur. Mr. Chairman, I think the one clarifying question that we should talk about today is in the last line, we include a situation where a board of trustee member is contemplated to play a role in his or her official capacity. We may also want any CEO appointment to go through a similar process as the board. And that may be a clarifying edit that could be captured there.
The- But don't you do that here? Any board of trustee member interested shall be reviewed and approved by the board's governance committee?
She said CEO.
It says he
And
added
the
the
CEO. Have you served on any of these? Do we have a history of the
Yeah,
CEO?
Dr. Steve said on like a global queen one, I know, she said, she actually said on probably a ton of them, or was appointed to them, so I don't remember us doing that.
So I will say it has typically, because we typically, when it comes to the CEO's activities, I reach out to Dr. Walker and we do memorialize that. So it was an oversight on my part. So I would amend it to say like appointments involving the CEO or a board of trustee member serving their official capacity will be reviewed and approved by the board's governance committee. And we can even add a line, the approval does not require a formal resolution. It should be memorialized in writing. So it doesn't, we don't have to wait for a full meeting.
From an internal audit perspective, when I was reading 8.2 as it was drafted, the very first sentence made me feel that the CEO has the authority to authorize Metro Health and any Metro Health employees, potentially including themselves. And so one great control point is always making sure you have separation of duties. So the CEO isn't authorizing what they can do on their own. So that is where the suggestion is coming from, at least so you can hear from an internal audit perspective.
I mean, we meet every month, so it's not like, dying to be on that committee, so we can just, I think we keep it just like. board trustees.
Yeah, why don't we make the modification then to get clarity that the CEO's appointment should come from the board? Can you,
Very good.
are you able to do that real time here or? Okay, we'll give you a minute.
Well, yeah, we're voting on that at the end of the meeting, so
All right.
we'll have that captured.
All right. So those are the two proposed changes as soon to be modified. Are we clear, board members, on this change? And we'll vote on this at the end of the meeting. There was another element from our last meeting that I was particularly interested in the question, and I don't know whether we want to bring that up at this point or not.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, do you want to entertain Mr. Corlett's question? Because it dealt with BOT 07 as well.
Yeah, and this does too, but yeah, let's do his, but after that, I think this is the point where I would want to share my thoughts on what I
Yes,
learned.
yes.
Fair enough. Okay, John, why don't you ask your question about BOT 07?
Sure, thank you. So it was a question, section 11, the donation of money, property, or services. And my question about that was whether 11.1 includes donations by the Metro Health Foundation. And additionally, do the donations of money referenced in this section include sponsorships that Metro Health provides to nonprofit or for-profit organizations? And if they aren't, I think they should be included. And then the last thing, I just would suggest a change that the CEO report these donations, including sponsorships, on a semi-annual basis, because they can be fairly substantial over time. And I'd rather not wait until the end of the year to know what they are, so.
And along with that, do we want to put a cap on that at all?
The budget, it's a cap.
An answer.
I think
So,
the budget's the cap, yeah.
Mr. Corlett, thank you very much for submitting that question. There are a couple components to your question. The first
Right.
part is whether we want to include the Metro Health Foundation. We should keep in mind that the foundation is a separate
Right.
501c3.
Yep.
It has a separate board. They are currently updating their code of regulations, which is essentially their bylaws. Their bylaws currently say now that the CEO president of the Metro Health System, a separate entity, is an ex officio CEO of the foundation. It has been recommended by the consultant that they retain to review their bylaws that we do, as Robin said, have a separation of duties. So they're going to change that function. So the CEO of the health system will not have the ability to make a donation or sponsorship on behalf of the foundation, because all donations and sponsorship determinations by the foundation have to go to the board of the foundation. So I think that addresses your first part of your question.
Yep.
The second part regarding the sponsorships, I'm going to turn that over to Allison. I believe we have a process for how sponsorships are handled.
We do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon. Yes, those are currently run through our community relations department. Ramona Brazil has that process. But would not be a problem at all to report that quarterly or semi-annually. However, the board would like those reported. I mean, we can report whatever you'd like to know. I mean, the total dollar amount, the organizations, we have all that information, so.
I think it'd be helpful, the organizations and the amount.
Okay,
I don't want to make it too onerous for anybody, so.
sure.
Just report.
Great.
So do we need to add that in?
In section, yes, in section 11.22, yes.
Are you gonna put
I think we
aside
just
for us?
say donations and sponsorships and then just change the
Before.
frequency of the reports.
On a semi-annual basis.
Semi-annual.
Semi-annual basis, yes. We're making that at a time.
Okay, you'll get that included in our wrap.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
I see Nancy Mendez has joined us. The final point on Board of Trustees Policy 07 is a reporting to you, as I indicated at our last meeting, what I was personally challenged to understand, whether there was any ambiguity about the CEO's employment status and who the boss of the CEO is. And because I thought there had been some question by previous CEOs as to what that relationship was. And if there was ambiguity, we had an opportunity to eliminate it. But I'm pleased to tell you, I don't think there is. In fact, I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty confident. And there are really critical documents that I reviewed. The CEO's employment agreement, which is a labor agreement, the Metro Health System CEO position summary, which was developed by Whit Kiefer, a third-party consultant, and I think that was developed when we went out to hire CEOs, if I'm not mistaken. And then we have board policies 06, 07, and 10. 06 is executive compensation. 07 is a delegation of authority we just talked about. And 010 is management duty to disclose. And then there's the final document, maybe the overriding one, which is Ohio Revised Code 339, hospitals, sections 0.03, 06, 07 particularly deal with this question. There's a whole bunch of segments to that Ohio Revised Code, but the question of the CEO's duties and the authority of the board are addressed in those three sections. And I would say it was very clear to me, and I have a 6-page outline that I grabbed all these phrases, and you'll be interested to know I used Microsoft Copilot to create one document, and I won't even read that to you, but the point is, there is no doubt whatsoever, if you triangulate all these documents, that the board has the authority to run the hospital, the CEO reports to the board, and the board, through its actions, delegates appropriately and expects response from the CEO, as we've clarified in at least 3 policies, 06, 07, and 10. So I don't think that there's any need for action at this point to take any steps to clarify it. And in the process of the summary of these 6 pages, there were 8 major categories that were reviewed. Performing duties of the CEO, compensation management, budget approval, reporting, management and control, financial oversight, professional engagements, and disclosure duties. That's the comprehensive world of which our relationship exists with the CEO. And I'm comfortable that we have adequately communicated our relationship. Now, I'm glad to share the 6 pages and the 1 page with you, but I indicated at the last meeting that that was a question I had as new chair of the governance committee, and so I'm comfortable that that has been resolved. So I'll leave it at that, and I guess to my fellow board members, now you folks, John and Harry, you probably knew all that because you've been through all this. As a new board member, I knew very little of this, and Artis, I'll have a lengthy discussion with you someday to share all this, but the point is there are these overriding documents that are really important to us, and I think they do an adequate job, particularly of our relationship with the CEO.
Just a quick question, is any of that new? How long has it been there for a long time? 06, 07, and 010?
07 was 2022. Actually, you folks as a board worked pretty hard on that.
That's the situation.
I mean, there were, about 4 revisions starting in January through August. So Harry, you would know that world. I don't know. John, were you there in 2022?
Yeah, that was after the.
Yeah, I mean, I think you did a great job on that
About
policy.
06, the one in 06, that was before that, right?
06 was compensation. Yeah,
Yeah,
Same time. I'm looking.
that's about the same time.
In 10.
10 was just last year.
yeah. So any thoughts, questions, Nancy, Artis, John, Harry?
Oh, very thorough. Look forward to having that conversation.
No, I'm good.
Agreed.
No, and I thank you, particularly board members who were part of that, for doing the good job that you did. And I think I'll take responsibility to explain to Adam Arnold and Lola what I've learned as a new board member. So I think that concludes any discussion. We'll vote on this resolution later. The next item on the agenda is the board management software public bid. Mr. Wellens, you want to get us started on that conversation?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to defer to Ms. Rose and Mr. Sork on that topic.
So we have received, the bid closed on Monday, correct?
Yes.
Bid closed on Monday and we have 4 respondents. We are working closely with the Metro Health Foundation Board. We will share this portal with them so that we're all on the same portal. And then I'm going to work with Kate Brown and some other individuals within the institution to review the respondents. If there are any board members that would like to be engaged in selecting the management software, please let me know. We will probably begin interviews the last week of April, going into May.
So Artis, for your benefit, what is now a paper system will be a digital system. So these board books then will be given to us on this platform, and that should make it easier for one and all. I have used a similar platform in my capacity as a bank director, and I've told both Veronica and Tamika that the big challenge is really on the administrative side of getting all the material into the board book. As users, it's pretty straightforward. You know, you got an agenda, and the agenda has it's basically similar to what we have in front of us on paper, except it'll be more readily available. We'll get it quicker, and we'll have all kinds of tools. The archives will be better, libraries, all that stuff's better and easier for us. But I would say in terms of evaluating, my sense is we ought to adhere to how Veronica and Tamika look at the burden of using the tool. Some may be easier than others.
Yes. And we will also be looking at price, so.
In price, yeah. Okay, so that'll be a subject, and I presume then the board will ultimately approve the choice?
Yes.
We sure can.
Mhm.
Right, we want
You'll
to,
recommend?
We'll recommend and you will approve.
Okay. Alrighty. Next item on the agenda, executive session best practices. This is really more of a sort of conceptual discussion. Chief Legal Officer Wellens, you want to get us started there?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, you asked me to look into best practices going to executive session for board level committees for a public hospital operating under Ohio Revised Code 339. I found several best practices, including that a committee should understand the purpose in going into executive session, ensuring that that purpose aligns with the permissible reasons outlined in Ohio Revised Code 121.22G, which we do. This may include, as you know, discussions regarding personnel matters, legal matters, and trade secrets. The committee should also ensure that a proper motion and a vote is made, or formal motion should be made to enter into executive session specifying the purpose. The motion should be seconded, and a majority of the vote should be approved. The committee should also limit attendance to only those individuals who are necessary for the discussion, who should be present at the executive session. This may include consultants, relevant staff, and legal counsel. Decisions should be avoided. Executive session should be used for deliberation and discussion. Formal decisions should be made in the public session. The committee should ensure that the committee members are reminded of their obligation that the discussions are confidential, that occur in executive session. And then after the executive session, the chair should provide a brief summary of the public meeting of the topic discussed without revealing the confidential details. And finally, as you asked me to do, we should regularly review and update policies and procedures regarding public meetings and executive session, ensure compliance with changing laws and best practices. So that concludes my report.
In this subject, I think we do a very good job of identifying the purpose of the meetings and the protocols, and I know those have changed. The question that I raised was, and it's not an issue at a meeting like this, but when we go into executive session and we're in a big board meeting and there's 30 non-board members still there, the question is, are all those folks supposed to be there? And I would say as a board member, I don't know who the relevant experts are or who's appropriate. We would rely on, I think, I would rely on staff, depending on the subjects that are for us. And maybe there's a range of subjects and some of the folks would be present for one of the subjects, but not all. But there is a potential confidentiality question that we're trusting these folks to understand their duty as well. I have no reason to believe that's been a problem for us. But as Tamika and I have discussed in the government world, when city councils go into city executive session, they're very specific generally where they say, we are adjourned, city council is adjourning to executive session and we will invite the mayor, the finance director, and consultant A. And that's it. You know, those are the folks that go. This is a very different environment than government. So I want to make sure we reflect on the experience that when we have a big crowd, when we say, please leave, does everyone know whether they should stay or leave? I don't know the question. So I would say to Dr. Walker, has there been any thought or concern or any problem in the past with who's in executive session that shouldn't be there? This may be a total non-issue, and I suspect it is. I just want to make sure we think it through.
Right. Not that I'm aware of. Usually it's just about making sure, you know, when we go online that people have a chance to get the computers off and that, but it has been an issue that I'm aware of.
I would say that we rely heavily on counsel to tell us if we're breaking the rules or not.
So how comfortable are you to know who should be in a room on a wide-ranging set of subjects?
For each one of the board committees and the board itself, either me or one of my colleagues in my legal department are supporting that committee. We will do a much better and thorough job of vetting those who are going to be staying for the executive session, working with the executive lead and the board chair, committee chair, on who should stay and who should be there.
Yeah,
Not be there, rather.
I think it's just another evolution of our experience of not leaving ourselves vulnerable to somebody being somewhere where they shouldn't.
John, I just wanted to say, I'm glad you brought this up. And while it's a small issue, I think it's one of those little things that we could just clean up and have that process every time we go into executive session. It's also a nice reminder about who's in the room, who's not when we do go into executive session. And it gives us a little bit of thought, like just that pause, who should be here? And it takes away the awkwardness at times when someone who's used to staying in executive session, maybe that particular executive session, we don't want them in the room. So by putting this process in place, I think it helps with some of the awkwardness and just helps with getting ahead of one day by mistake, there is a mistake that's made and someone that stays that shouldn't be stayed. It's just good practice, I think.
Yeah, all right. So we'll challenge ourselves to sharpen up.
Yes, sir. So I think what we're agreeing, we should, at the beginning of exec session, say, I'm inviting blank, 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 blank.
Well, I leave it to,
Yeah, we'll put together.
yeah, I'll figure that out.
And then so like she said, when we know who's supposed to be there.
What we've been doing normally in more than more in the recent past, in the board meetings, we have been saying, we're going into executive session and every management, please step out. And so Dr. Walker, except for James, Allison, Tamika. So he says that, I think for quality, for instance, those individuals may need to stay there because they are Dr. Gollop's subject matter experts. And so they do. So that's the big meeting. With finance, we've tried to be very deliberate on who is in and who is out. And so I will definitely work more closely with James and his staff to make sure, but I think over time we have gotten, since I've been here, I've been more cognizant of who's in the room and who's not.
And go ahead.
If I may, my experience on this has been varied from being a chair who was appointed a member of the board committee to being the medical staff president, right, to being the interim chief clinical officer. It was never truly clear that if I'm in the meeting, that I'm the Council of Chairs representative as a chair, when that goes into executive session, do I step out? Do I stay? Right? So that clarity, I think, would be appreciated. By the same token, I think, with the medical staff president, I would get up and leave, and then, Dr. Sue was like, no, you should stay. You report directly to the board.
Okay.
Right? The chairs should, right? So I think it should be clear. And I just say that with knowing that the chairs who sit on different board committees and the medical staff president are very invested in the board and want to be here as a resource.
Sure.
They want the knowledge of what's going on, but they also want to be the resource to the board. So I just put that out there for your thought process.
Well, and that's it's a fine line. It's a judgment call. What we want to do is not offend, what we don't want to do is offend somebody who feels left out. That's not our intent here either. And so we'll have to figure out, when in doubt, do I go or stay? But I am in doubt. And maybe at some point, we ought to tell in a bigger group to say, if you're not sure, it's okay, because it's not clear and it may change from meeting to meeting, subject to subject. Ask, or in some appropriate way.
Yeah, we'll come up with some language for that, Mr. Chairman.
All right, fair enough. I think that concludes well, there's one more item, the board retreat, by virtue of really multiple schedules, including mine, and the fact that we have 3 new board members who are just getting up to speed. We're going to target October 1st as our board retreat. That gives us plenty of time to get some foundation underneath us, particularly with the new board members, and prepare for a robust discussion. And included in that board retreat will be a board evaluation. So we need some seasoning of board experience before we can evaluate ourselves. So that'll give us, I think, plenty of time to do that. And there'll be probably plenty of meaty subjects for us that will become clearer as we move towards that October 1st date. And if that date seems to be problematic as we get closer to it, we'll figure out a more compatible date. So mark that on your calendar. I think
We've already gotten the calendar.
Yeah, you've got an invitation. Let's move on to future subjects. System-wide third party was contracts. In our discussion and preparation for what does that mean, particularly with James and Brendan, a couple of things are important. We're really thinking about contracts that become work product for the board. Robin, I'm looking at Robin, who oversees a lot of these. There's a lot of contracts you have that don't get to us. We're less interested in those. We want you to be interested in them. But our concern is system-wide areas that become critical elements of our thinking and our decision-making. So that narrows it down, hopefully, in terms of who we're talking about. And what we're really going to be contemplating is making sure that the organization provides proper oversight and accountability to the contractor, that we are properly evaluating their effectiveness, and that we have identified conflicts of interest both at the beginning and throughout the process, should they come to pass. So we'll be working closely with the staff then to understand, how we can do a structured job. And again, I don't have any reason to believe we haven't done an adequate job. And I don't know that we have a problem to fix. But as a new board member, I've been pretty amazed at the number of contractors we have here doing a lot of work. And they do important work for us. And we delegate a lot of critical decision-making and analytical work to third parties, and that's appropriate. But we want to make sure we're keeping a good eye on them as an organization structure. And so this will be more of a review of how we're doing it and if there's a need to change. Is that clear to you?
Yes, being on the receiving end, and as I think through it, I go back to BOT 07 as kind of the guardrails of what are the types of contracts that the board has delegated down, and a lot of it, I think, comes based off of dollar amount, but making sure that we're providing appropriate updates to the board on the type of contracts that the system's entering into that you need to be aware of that hasn't been delegated down. I don't know, Brendan. Yeah.
In many ways, it's only a slight expansion of some of the current reporting requirements that exist, right? So we bring a group of contracts annually that address a pre-qualified list. And that's oftentimes used by our construction colleagues and facilities teams. And that has a certain threshold that we can automatically utilize them. There's also a requirement that we regularly bring consultant agreements before the board. So I think that this work product, using that as an additional term, is really only a slight expansion, but a good one.
And an example that I heard at the last meeting was this contractor who does all the calculations on our PBVC. I can't remember their name. Whatever it is, but the point is, obviously,
Internal
there's a
audit?
third party that we rely on.
It was internal.
Internal audit, my team.
Yeah.
Because there's a conflict within that, so that's why we have to engage.
Yeah, all right, so the point is, it's a critical third-party delegation. We rely on the data that they give us, and we want to make sure we understand they're being managed properly and evaluated. So we'll figure out how to do that. The points on the future subjects on the agenda, points B, review of Board of Trustees policies, and there's 10 of them now. C, bylaws, and D, review committee charters. I'm going to be working with the committee chairs to identify any changes, and at the end of the year, we'll try and create basically a package of amendments so that we don't burden ourselves throughout the year with these little changes as they come about. We know these things should be lively. I think our bylaws require us to review the bylaws annually. So some of these, I think we're obligated to do annually anyway. So we'll just put some structure to the thinking, and I'll take responsibility to work with the chairs. And Nancy, I know you're, in your committee, we'll figure out, how your charter and any policies affect your work and any things you think we need to make an improvement upon. Audit committee already did that work. They already put some changes that we voted on at the last meeting. So that's a good example for us. Any questions on then B, C, D? E is the assessment. I already talked about that. So we'll be working through the summer. And then the last item for future conversation is scope of insurance coverage. And I think this deals with trustee coverage, board of directors.
It's all of our insurance portfolio. We bring that to the board. I think just recently.
Yeah, we did.
We did it in January. We did it before the full board. So going forward, we'll do it in governance.
Okay. So although I thought that was pretty interesting to me as a board member, we may do the spade work here, but I think as a board member, I would want to know the insurance. It's a magnificent amount of insurance. So I think that report.
Yeah, we'll report it out to the board. Yes.
Figure out how to do that. So those are the items on the agenda. What I would propose we do, I better get my script out here, is that we adjourn to executive session. So we are now going to move into executive session to discuss hospital trade secrets as defined by Ohio Revised Code 1333.61, and to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee, or the investigation of charges or complaints against a public official, into conference with the public body's attorney to discuss disputes involving the public body that are the subject of pending or imminent court action as defined by Ohio Revised Code 121.22, subsection G. Do I have a motion to recess into the executive session to discuss these matters?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Moss. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Walker, Dr. Walker. All those in favor shall answer aye when I call the roll.
Oh.
Yeah, so Artis, are you in favor of Nancy?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Willett? Dr. Walker?
Yes.
And
Yes.
Mr. Moss? And Mr. Summers votes yes. The ayes have it, and we stand adjourned. And joining us will be Robin, do you need to stay?
I do not need to say.
Okay. Sarah?
Implementing the new rule already.
There you go.
I like it. Fast.
Veronica, I don't think there's anything that you couldn't stay for. What'll help you? Tamika, what do you think?
She's taking notes.
approve changes to BOT 07, of which we're going to get a revised set of words from our counsel Brendan Stewart. Brendan? So,
You're back in
Are we,
the-
are we back on the public record?
You're back on the
yeah, we're
public
back on the
record.
public
Okay.
record. And we're going to proceed with our agenda to consider amending Board of Trustees Policy 07. We have two modifications. We've identified with some amendments to those. So Brendan, how do you want to proceed here?
Yeah, so I'll read you verbally the changes from what was in your packet. And we'll field any questions and work our way to a final version. So I have the policy up, BOT 07. In policy section 1 on page 1, no change to that language. It remains as it was in your packet. The first change is in section 8.
I didn't see a notice that it said like rooms are closing.
It closed.
Are we good to continue?
So what are you questioning whether you're still in
Yeah,
executive
It was
session?
the computer,
Others?
It was the computer.
Oh,
Brian,
yeah,
that's
sorry.
fine.
okay, I see.
Sorry, that was your AV tech.
Okay. Brendan?
So the first change from what's in your pack is in section 8.2. In order to capture that the CEO will also go through any an approval process through the board's governance committee of an official capacity appointment, we've struck the last sentence in the 8.2 draft and replaced it with appointments involving the CEO or a board of trustee member serving in an official capacity role will be reviewed and approved by the board's governance committee. The approval does not require a formal resolution, but will be memorialized in writing.
Wow, that's a sentence. Why don't you read that one more time?
So again, striking the last sentence as it exists in your packet and replacing it with appointments involving the CEO or a board of trustee member serving in an official capacity role will be reviewed and approved by the board's governance committee, period. The approval does not require a formal resolution, but will be memorialized in writing.
Okay, everybody get that? Should we read it another time, one more time? Yeah, let's read it again.
Final sentence replaced with appointments involving the CEO or a board of trustee member serving in an official capacity role will be reviewed and approved by the board's governance committee. The approval does not require a formal resolution, but will be memorialized in writing.
Questions, thoughts?
I thought the board if there's a board, I thought that was a resolution. The CEO can make appointments without a board resolution, but I thought if it was gonna be the board, if I understood you right.
I think this was trying to capture how some of the approvals have been done in the past with the board chair kind of
Just in
signing
writing,
off,
yeah.
right? So we still think we're within the lines of the updated program and from a Ohio ethics perspective, but trying to.
So if
keep
I
this
got
administrative-
appointed to another board outside that wouldn't need board approval, just,
Yes, it would.
No, we wouldn't need board
oh,
approval.
that's okay, okay, maybe I
That's what
misunderstood.
he's saying, need board approval.
Yeah, that's what I want.
But it
That's
has to be
what-
memorialized in writing, doesn't necessarily have to be a formal resolution.
Okay,
The board approval through the governance committee with how that language is
Correct.
drafted.
Correct.
So there wouldn't be a full board
Okay,
vote, it would
gotcha.
be a governance committee vote?
My audit ears, if I were to come in and audit, I would then want to know who is on the governance committee and do we have formal documentation from each of those governance committee members authorizing?
and as you recall, when the committee just makes recommendation to the board, it's not a actual, I mean, I guess you could make it an actual, but it has really no authority, technically has no authority, it's only after the approval of the consent agenda. And then the board, could pull something out and have a vote on it, but it's just a recommendation to the board.
We could do it that way, yeah.
That's how it is right now, so, right? Committee votes are just recommendations to the board.
So would we want a formal board resolution then?
You know, when in doubt, yes.
Yeah, what's what
right?
she says.
From an approval perspective, I think it comes down, because Sarah's presentation earlier was about how there are more flexibilities that are now introduced. So I think it comes down to the comfort of all board members. And do you feel that if the CEO or another board member were to be appointed into one of those capacities, do you feel that it's something that the full board should weigh in on? Or is it something that the full board is comfortable delegating down to the governance committee?
So
And-
what-
But again, if the government committee votes for it, the full board still has to approve it through the consent agenda. And the government and the board could pull that out, what I've done before, pull that out and say, I want more discussion on that because it's just the consent, it's just consent. So it has no, of itself, it hasn't passed anything. Only when it gets to the board and the board votes on it, or, votes on the consent agenda, does it actually become, am I right on that?
You're
Real,
correct.
yes, for
You're correct.
resolutions.
You're
Yes,
correct.
that's
But
right.
here's-
So I'm okay if the board, if the government votes on it, but then it goes to the board for either the consent agenda to approve it, just like we do everything else.
As a practical matter, how often does this happen? Zero.
Since I've been here.
Uh, So in the interest of transparency, we could make it a formal vote and not worry about it and see if it becomes burdensome.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I would say, let's default to having the board make this a formal vote. It becomes a resolution then by the board.
And in some ways then, from a reading perspective, the last sentence, I think, becomes even cleaner by replacing the last sentence with appointments involving the CEO or a board of trustee member serving in an official capacity role will be reviewed and approved by the board.
Got it? Yeah. All righty. Any questions? All right.
The last update to BOT 07 discussed today was in relation to section 11 to contemplate, in addition to donations of money, property and services to nonprofit entities, that we would also track sponsorships. To clarify, in 11.1, that the CEO has the authority to approve sponsorships and donate Metro Health money, assets, and property, and that any reporting of sponsorships or donations be semi-annual instead of annual.
Okay. Any questions on those? Do I hear a motion to approve the amended World BOT 07 as chronicled by Attorney Brendan Soar? Do I hear such a motion? Moved and seconded to approve changes to board policy 07 as we just reviewed. Any discussion on any of these? All those in favor of these amendments signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. There are no other folks to vote nay, no abstentions. So the motion carries. So we've amended BOT 07.
And that'll go before the board for
Yeah.
approval.
Very good. And I believe that concludes the action of the governance committee. All righty, seeing no objection to adjournment, this meeting stands adjourned.
Thank you.